afternoon, everybody. I'm Billy. I work at the Whitney Library. I'm the Circulation Department head, and I titled my talk Tools of the Trade. And the reason I named it is the theme is that I'm trying to get people to rethink policy as a flexible tool that we could use to give good customer service, especially in my line of work when I'm trying to give good customer service to patrons who are having challenging times due to their social or economic status. And the goal of this would be to basically allow more patrons to use the services that we offer, which fulfills the mission statement that I work with in this library district. And that hopefully that I can possibly help them overcome these challenges that they have, or some of them, or help them get over it. And some of the ways to achieve this is, you could bend policy, and that would let you build a valuable relationship with these patrons so that they'll continue to come in and use your services. You can also use policy to help repair their socioeconomic challenges, it's financial or something of that nature. And you can always ratchet up policy to be more strict with the patrons who are abusing the privileges that you're trying to give them. And I promise this is the last intentional puns that I'm going to use in my title. But I did want to caveat on this to say that if you want to try to model this flexible policy in your departments, you should really have a serious discussion with your supervisors/managers about when it would be appropriate to have a flexible policy, or what areas it would be okay to be flexible. And then once you have that hammered out, you should be comfortable doing it while you're helping the patrons. I actually have an article that I give all of my new staff when they start my department, written by journalist Richard Abowitz, and it was published in a Las Vegas Weekly. And this gentleman stayed in a budget suites type of facility just down the street from our library for a week over Christmas. And he wrote basically a daily account of his experience there. And I think it's a real good eye-opener for my staff to get an idea of what kind of situations most of our patrons are in our area. And I think we have we have a lot of patrons that are in poverty in our area that come into the library, and it gives us a better perspective, and I think we can help them better by understanding their situation a little better. I was going to give a few examples of where I am flexible with policy, just to give you some ideas. We've had lots of homeless people come in, and I had this one couple that were homeless, and they've actually visited many of the branches in our district. And they had been struggling with it for several years, and they were really good library patron users. They were always polite. They were trying to be really good with returning their materials and taking good care of them, but they had problems with moving from place to place. And whenever proof of address came up as part of the policy, which is often, they had trouble providing that to us. So I didn't mind being flexible with that policy and giving them more time to come in with proof of address so they can still use their account, using something as proof of address that maybe I wouldn't normally use. They're staying with a friend or something like that. I mean, there was one time they were staying like on the property but not inside the building. So and they explained this to me, but I thought that was good enough in their situation that I went ahead and used it. So that was one example. We get a lot of children that come into our branch from the neighborhood, and they are unaccompanied by guardians. We have a policy that if you're under 10, unattended by a guardian, that's not appropriate. And I think we've been this rule a lot. It basically restricts if they're under 10 and they're not violating any of our rules of conduct or they're not misbehaving, we typically don't bother them. We actually encourage them to come in, try to provide a safe environment for them, and encourage them to use the materials that are there. And we see it as an opportunity to help them. Now, that being said, we've had a 3-year-old walk in from out the street, and we're not going to just ignore that. We took extra measures for that. But definitely, if you had a 7, 8, 9-year-old that comes in on a daily basis from across the street, we're not going to kick them out because their age doesn't fit what's on the piece of paper. And then my last example is we have, like I said, a lot of patrons in our area that live in low-rent housing apartments. And they are dealing with some pretty serious financial situations, especially over these last 5 years. And I found that giving them breaks on their rate charges, considering adjusting replacement fees for items that they've lost because they were evicted from their homes or apartments, offering them a chance to find a replacement somewhere else. I find it offline, used, and bring that in. These are the kind of things that I do on a pretty much a daily basis in my branch. And I've always found that when I am able to negotiate these patrons and find an acceptable solution that's within their means and is acceptable to us, they really appreciate it. And I think they really learn to value the service that we provide, and it makes a better patron. It makes them a better patron. They're going to respect the library more. They're probably going to respect the materials more, and it just helps build that relationship and make it more valuable. And that's pretty much all I had to say. So let's do my talk.
Good enough for government work.
Better the first time?
No more?
My wife said you can't do anything better than that.
Do you have any extra?
No, I only brought 30, and it looks like there's 40 people there. I'm just astonished. But if someone wants to make a copy, feel free. And if you want a copy and you don't get one, email me, and I will send you an electronic copy. Although it won't have my little drawing on the bottom. Okay, so I think the most important thing actually to convey to you in the few minutes that I have left are part of the things I was thinking about last night while I was worrying about this talk, and also part of the conversation that I had with my wife this morning while I was worrying about this talk. First of all, actually, I want to find out, can you hear me if I walk away from can you hear me if I walk away? Yeah. In the back, I don't see why your heads? Okay, all right, so you can, so I got a big voice. Okay. I'm going to walk away from it then. So, I need to find out who I'm talking to. So, how many of you work at a circulation desk? How many of you work at a reference desk? How many of you do something else? Oh my God, what do you guys do?
Question.
Services and administration? That's most of it. Oh my gosh, okay, all right. So that helps me understand who I'm talking to. So the sheet that those of you don't have, and since you're librarians, I hope you're sharing. I want to just outline, and actually what I'm going to do is start with my drawing, because this is something that sticks in my mind from a week that I was being lectured to by a librarian who was brought in from Ohio State, and I can't remember her name, while I was getting my degree at the University of Texas, Austin. And she drew this on the whiteboard for us as an additional seminar to my training, and one of the things that sticks most prominently in my training as a librarian, and that is the information gap diagram. And as you can see from the diagram, you guys don't have one, this is just like an arroyo. Library staff on the left, and library staff on the right, and patron on the left. And so, is that where you belong?
No.
No. Okay, so that's an easy question. No. And where do you belong?
Next to the patron.
Next to the patron. How many of you have seen this diagram and have heard her lecture before? Anybody? Okay. All right. So that's actually the whole thing. And actually, the thing that I wanted to use that diagram or that drawing to do for you is encapsulate just what Debbie said, which is that when a person comes into your service area, they are extremely vulnerable, and they are coming to you in a way that they are I point out to you in the paragraph. She works at Mountain View. She has an RN and a 4-year nursing degree from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. She was 4.0 student. She walks into our libraries and she tells me, Jack, I'm intimidated. I'm afraid. And one of the things I'm afraid of is that someone's going to ask me a question that makes me feel stupid. And so, of course, then my next question to myself is, what about the rest of our patrons in Las Vegas, many of whom have not even graduated from high school? And so, one of the things, and actually I'm just going to go down the list there with what she said. One of the things she said is she goes into a public library in town, and the librarians and the service desk people are looking at their computer, and they do not look up. And that is one of the things that actually kills me. And actually my own staff does it in the College of Southern Nevada Library. But I'm going to actually try and do something about that. But one of the things you want to do is realize that you have a chance to change how someone feels. And if you give them the sense that you are busy because your boss has asked you for a report, or you're adding books to the collection, or whatever it is you're doing, and you don't look up within 5 seconds, you're diminishing the self-esteem of the person who's looking at you. Because one of my staff did it to me this morning when I was trying to give her attention, and she was busy ordering pencils for me. And I try to be extremely patient with people on the other side of the service desk, but unfortunately for me, sometimes I'm less patient with my own staff and my fellow staff members. And that's a fault. But what I want you to go away with is that your job, when someone comes in and says, I'm ignorant, and here's the big arroyo in front of me, I don't even know what's in there or how to frame a question about how to get the information I need. All I know is that my husband came back with a diagnosis of diabetes, and it's going to change our lives. And what your job at the service desk is, and even if you're at any kind of position where you're providing service, either internally to other people in the library or externally to the patrons, is to get alongside them, like Deb said, and go down to that arroyo. And part of that is framed in my bullet points at the top. If you're going to provide really super customer service, you need to be able to recognize that that person has a question before they know they have a question. And you can do that because you're all watching people all the time, and there's body language. Question mark above the head. That person is vulnerable. And one of the things that she told me this morning is that the entire staff at Mountain View have been trained and have a rule, and she said you can be written up at Mountain View. If someone has a question mark above their head and you're too busy, whether you're a doctor or an administrator, to ask them, do you need to know where the restroom is? Do you need to know which door you came in to get back because your loved one just died in one of our hospital beds? Because you don't know what that question mark is above their head. And you don't know, as you just explained to me, I'm sure you're going to hear from the public librarian, especially in the public library in Las Vegas, what kind of question mark is above that person's head. There, she was right. So let me just go down the bullet points. You got to be able to help them frame a question, and that's a very intense skill about listening. And I'm also impatient with people who don't listen well, especially if they're working in the library. Ability to recognize and respect the patron's information cocoon. Even if it's a Republican congressman who's trying to tell you about female reproduction, you need to back up and say, okay, well, that's a viewpoint. And then realize that just because you're sitting at a desk that has a lot of books on it, or that has a big logo behind it that says circulation, the person on the other side of the desk has no responsibility to respect your expertise. And often, this is true at the college library as well as LDL where I work here too. You shouldn't have an expectation they're going to respect your information cocoon, which is what we call our expertise. Because when you do that, you're barricading yourself. And you are supposed to get as vulnerable as they are. Take off that mantle, get down in that arroyo with them, and build that bridge over the top. And the locus of truth, that is just something that's in my mind because I read a study and it tells us that everyone in this room is more likely to believe a person that looks like you than someone that doesn't look like you. And if you're 17 years old and you're black, you come up to my desk, I might have a 2 and a lot of training and years in the library, but they're going to believe the pal that's coming with them at the desk asking the question before they're going to believe me. And that's just the nature of human beings because we've been developmentally created to believe people that are like the tribe that we're from. And that's something that's why you have to abandon your own authority when you're trying to help someone. And so the other two things are pretty more straightforward. You gotta, if you're gonna do work here in this field, you're gonna have to hard information. And we know information sources. That's part of the information for truth limits. Okay, if I had time, I would actually point out this poster, which is an information bridge that I use in my presentations in the library where I don't have a timer. The students will have to listen to me. So thank you for your attention, and we'll have time at the end. This is the young man who actually made this, so I'm not going to make sure that I don't try to plagiarize this. This is one and he made this, and this is the cutting edge of human knowledge, and it was created by a CSM student, and I'm very proud of it.
I'm going to probably do a hybrid of Billy and Jack because I'm not sure I can lead and not. I'll find out. But I'm just really honored to be in this company. I'm very honored to be in this company, and I'm really excited to hear what people have to say and what people are doing at their branches, at their libraries. And I'm really happy that Joe organized it in this format because I love it. And many minds get together and it's really cool. So my talk is really brief. I just wanted to point out some things that helped me and inspired me. Thank you very much. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is it's kind of like a brain trick that I do at work because we've all had those days where we're just not feeling it. Right? We're not feeling it. We don't want to provide with customer service. Let's all be vulnerable and admit that sometimes we feel like that, right? So I have a little trick, and what I've done is take my brain is looking for these things, and I'm talking about service between customers, right? So sometimes if I'm having a bad day, I'll kind of stop and take a break, look around, observe interactions in the library, and I had some examples of me giving customer service to patrons, but none of them are as good, I feel, as the little things that I see in my day that inspire me to do good by people, to be generous, to be kind. So I'm going to talk about a couple of examples that are just for this week. So it's Tuesday, right? On Tuesday, come to work, and we have to do a story room switch. The facilities guys are in our story room. We've got to get, like, within 15 minutes, our storytellers step from the story room into the meeting room because the kids are coming and they want a story time, and the facilities guys are still, they need time in our story room. So I was playing traffic cop at the front door, telling people, no story time over there, get your kids over there, no story time over there, kids going that. And it was interesting because a couple of times I was pulled away from the door to go walk someone to the surf desk or whatever it was. And when I came back, I noticed that people were opening the door for each other. So I kind of saw this as my role as the traffic cop at the door. But there are people who come to our libraries, our patrons, who are serving each other, and they don't have to. It's above and beyond the call of duty. So we can, I think, take some inspiration from that. I saw a man open the door for an older lady. I saw a sibling open the door for their younger sibling. And I think that if we're looking for the big one, we might get lost. I mean, there's so many little examples in your day. We see a lot of people. So I'm saying, generate some of your inspiration from the people that you see, your patrons, not just the people who work in the library. Another example that I wanted to share involves a little toddler. Her thing at the library is now climbing onto chairs. So she just learned how to walk, but she now wants to climb on chairs. And the chair she wanted to climb yesterday was right next to a 14-year-old who was working on the computer. So I had a 14-year-old on the computer, a little toddler starting to bother her because in the chair next to her, she's got one leg up, she's doing this much. gotta get up. Do you want me to help you get up? She didn't have to do any of that. She's 14, what the heck does she care about this little kid? But I know I was inspired by that, and I know that her mother, who was watching from just a short distance away, was also inspired by that. So I guess my point about these stories is that when you're feeling like you don't want to do customer service, and you're annoyed, or you've had a nasty run-in with someone who pays you a salary. I think it's a good idea to take a break, look around, and see if you can see how customers serve each other for inspiration on how to do that too. The second thing I wanted to mention is kind of annoying. I have like a lot of discussions with librarians in small circles, and we say it in small circles, but I've never really say it in a large circle, that some people just need to be true with who they say they are. You know what I mean? Like, if you work at a library, you help people. You help people, I help people, libraries help people. It's not that complicated, but it seems to be, I guess, for some. So I'm trying to my message is be loyal and true to that part of yourself that made you want to work here in the first place. You could have been a mechanic. I'm sure you're qualified for Barnes & Noble at least, right? But you're here, you're working at the library, there's something magical that you see, that the patrons see, and it's the experience. I think Starbucks is a good example. They don't even have to advertise. You have to experience them, and then you get hooked. So I think that we should talk a little bit more about the reasons why we're doing this and not really get too far away. Honor yourself by relocating away from customers if this is not your thing. It's sad to say, but this temperament is not a good fit for everybody. So if you really want to do some good and you're not good with customers and you don't want to serve patrons, guests, clients, whatever you want to call them, you might want to just kind of reassess where you want to go. So we work in libraries, therefore we help people. Your days are going to be so long if you're in it for the wrong reasons. But if you're in it for the right reasons, being forthcoming and unapologetic about the fact that you like to help people might give you a lot of leverage. So good luck, I say. And then my last little customer service piece is for people who are looking for the magic bullet. Like, there's a magic bullet to customer service. All you creep in the door, and then she says, sir, thank you, please, whatever. And there are lots of little pathways, but I believe that good customer service is customized service. All patrons don't need the same things from us. You know what I mean? It's customized. This one may be one thing, this one a little more, a little less. So I think when we talk about customer service, we're really talking about customized service, which is that tricky way that we navigate all these different personalities and library issues. If there were a perfect rule book, I'm sure by now collection development would have given it to one of us and we would have been able to float it. So it doesn't exist. So, you know, it's going to stay important that we anticipate change and we have to adapt. So thank you for your time. I look forward to please like us on Facebook. The library. And I should do this. In honor of April, which is National Poetry Month, and also in honor of my love for Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, I want to share a limerick with you all about customer service. I would just like a moment to add, customer service can make you feel rad. Adapt, be inspired. One day you'll retire, and you'll miss glory days that you had. Thank you very much.
I've got 11 stories for you in 7 minutes. What do we do at the library? We help people find books, right? I think it's my job to make people cry. In a good way. A woman called saying she forgot to return her books because her grandpa died. The woman burst into tears and hung up with me when I told her I had waived her fines. She called back later and apologized for hanging up. A woman came in crying because she had come from Texas for her sister's wedding and bachelorette party. Her toddler had cut the corners off her driver's license, and the club would not accept it unless she showed a receipt that she had ordered a replacement. Her sister had told her, "You're ruining everything." A man asked for the definition of remission. his stage 4 cancer was in remission. I got this one from Joanna Taylor at the Windmill Library to the floor. Congratulations, today's your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. She burst into tears. She had lost her day before. I know that Claire remembers this one. There was the woman on the way to her sister's funeral, looking for books of eulogies because she didn't know what to say. Miss Fox came in with 3 volunteers from the Red Cross. They all needed help booking a room for her on a computer because Miss Fox's house had burned to the ground that morning. A woman asked for books on death. Her ex-boyfriend had recently been found dead in his apartment. A woman said, husbands you've been married to for 60 years are not supposed to die. 74-year-old Mr. S., a retired pit boss, said, don't get old. He lost his teeth as a side effect of chemotherapy. We talked for a while about death and dying. I overheard a woman telling a younger man at the computer print release station, I'm 65, living with my parents. I told her her situation reminded me of my friend Bill, not his real name, who was 63 living with his parents to care for his father who had Alzheimer's. Her dad also had Alzheimer's. She said it was so stressful that her husband had moved to a weekly motel. I told her that Bill attends an Alzheimer's caregiver support group. She nearly cried just to know others are going through the same thing. And of course, there are the others in abusive relationships looking for help, in foreclosure, or cashing out their 401ks to make ends meet. All of us at the library. Jack said that we have a chance to change feelings at the library, and I think these experiences are not an addiction if we're paying attention. I have one other story, a longer story. I'm a bit afraid to tell the story, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. What would you do if a patron asked you to pay a bill for them on your staff computer, using their credit card, of course? We all know the answer. No. There's no question, no. But can you imagine any situation where this would be the right thing to do? December 28, 2011, a man named Mr. B asked me to do just that, though not in these words exactly. Here's the situation. He had just moved to Las Vegas from California and wanted to renew his post office box there. He had to renew it before the end of the year or he would lose it. So what was he doing at the library? He'd already been to the post office. They told him the only way to renew was online. The post office suggested he come to the library, that maybe we could help. Mr. B had just gotten a library card. I imagine he told staff he needed to use a computer, so they said he needed a library card. It turns out, Mr. B had never used a computer, ever. I noticed on his account that he was 87 years old. I was nervous and not sure what to do. My dilemma, of course, is that this is not something we do, help someone with personal information on the staff computer. But I also knew that the computer lab staff were busy and probably wouldn't be able to do this for him as well on a public computer. I went to the post office website and discovered Mr. B needed an email address to make this work. In the process, I learned that not only was he 87 years old, he was a World War II vet and retired from the Air Force. His father had served in World War I. I called the computer lab to double check, but was told they will show patrons where to sign up for an email account, but don't help people fill out the form. I thanked Mr. B for his military service. He said veterans don't get thanked much anymore. He complained about how the government doesn't care for veterans and talked about how many veterans are homeless. He talked about how politicians don't understand war compared with his and his father's generation. He was polite this whole time. At some point, I decided there was no way I was going to let this World War II vet be passed around from one government agency to another. I created his email account, even picked his login and password. I suppose I could just use mine, but I created one for him knowing he would never use it. I guess I thought I needed to protect his privacy. One of the email security questions asked, "What was your favorite food as a child?" Mr. B said, "During the Depression, all we had to eat was beans and potatoes." I created his post office online login and entered his credit card info on my staff computer and printed his receipt for free. At the end, I walked him to the front entrance. Can I finish?
Please.
I told him we don't normally do this for someone, but I did it because I could see no other way for him to get his box renewed. We shook hands. He was very grateful. His eyes teared up. I'm horrified to think I could easily have chickened out and not helped this man. Instead, I had an experience I will remember forever. That's the end.
How do I follow that up? I'm Bethany Lafferty. I work at the Henderson Library at the Green Valley branch as the assistant branch manager and the head of youth services. I think I just gave myself a 1 minute. I wasn't paying attention, so I'll try to stop that. So a couple people touched on a lot of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about, starting out with why I wanted to become a librarian and work in a public library in particular, as opposed to being a school librarian or an academic librarian or some other type of information specialist. I grew up in a pretty liberal town outside of Chicago, so I had this really altruistic idea of working in the public library. You're going to help people. I'm going to help that guy who didn't get his high school diploma, get a GED, and find a job. I'm going to teach an immigrant how to read and write in English. All things like that where you think are just going to be the most life-changing experiences for the people you meet in the library. That stuff doesn't happen daily. Maybe, once or twice a year you might have these really just life-changing experiences. I don't feel like they happen all the time. But I think, like Tanya said, a lot of us come into working in the library because we want to help people and make a difference in their lives. But sometimes finding the newest James Patterson or putting a hold on the latest DVD release is not changing people's lives. At least doesn't feel like it. Although you're making that person's day, you're providing them with entertainment, giving them something to do when they might be, waiting in a hospital waiting room for a loved one who's having surgery or something like that. So you never really know what's going on in their life and where they're coming from. So you can do these little things that do make a difference to them. So the other part about, and I think that when we're trying to help people, we forget that providing help and assistance isn't just, trying to make a difference in their lives, but you do have to have some level of customer service, delivering it in a positive and helpful way. And I started out of college working for a discount brokerage firm in Chicago, and I had to take a training class called Quality Service Skills, QSS. It was like the biggest thing for our call center. Everybody has to learn the same types of phrases. We had like a list of phrases that you use with people on the phone. You probably have heard it if you had to call your credit card company, something like, "Oh, I can understand how that would be really frustrating." These pat answers that you get from people on the phone. I had to learn how to do that stuff and how to say it in a happy, upbeat voice when the person might be screaming in my ear. And I think that experience helped me to do in-person customer service in a much more compassionate way, where it's not about giving pat answers, always listening to the specific rules and following. I want to share about doing things kind of outside the box for a patron was that last summer we had this family that started coming to the library right after school was out. They had driven out here from California after the school year was over. It was a family of a mom, her 2 teenagers and a 10-year-old, her mother, and she was also pregnant. And they were homeless. They had a place to stay for the night, but during the day they had nowhere to be, so they were understandably hanging out in the library. It's a cool place to be in a hot city. And they could get computers. They were able to use the local address where they were staying overnight to get their cards in. And we had at least 2 or 3 incidents of mom and kids fighting, mom and her mom fighting, and having to write up the incident reports, getting the guard involved, breaking up these fights. And we really just feel like we're in for a long summer with this family. They're going to be so tiring. And then after she had her baby, things really changed because for me, I had just had a child myself, and so I really wanted to help her, help herself and help her family. Because you could see she was really trying to just pick her life up. She clearly made a lot of bad choices and mistakes in her life. But I wasn't there to judge her or make her feel bad about anything, but just to help her. And so one day we just sat down and I listened to her and said, what is it that you're trying to do? What do you need? What resources are you not getting in connection with? So we, got her all the connections and locations and phone numbers for getting caseworkers for welfare, food stamps, different food banks, and this is where I'm using my librarian skills, which was amazing because I'm doing research, finding her resources in the community. They did have a car among them, so that helped her immensely. And finally, she seemed to be on her way. When she had her new baby, there was myself and another woman I worked with. We both had recently had children, and so we donated a lot of clothes to her and different equipment and stuff like that. She had nowhere for her baby to eat and sleep. So I gave her this little bassinet type thing to put the baby in. Another coworker bought her a stroller. That made her cry uncontrollably that day. And then finally she just seemed to have it all together. She said, the last thing we need is a place to live. How can I find a place that's going to be free? And I was like, I don't have any idea. I really don't. But I just kept researching, kept looking for organizations, and I found her a place called Lutheran Social Services of Nevada. They have a housing program for women and children, and there doesn't have to be a cost. And I got her connected with them. I let her use my office phone. So this is kind of where I'm going outside of just coming in my office, using my phone. We have these private meetings. But she got connected with them and had to get some paperwork done, and she went and turned it in and had to do an interview, and she was one of 4 families that were being considered for this one apartment, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. And here she's got a newborn, 2 teenagers, a 10-year-old, and her mother with various health problems. So that's a lot of people to fit into a 2-bedroom apartment, but when you're sleeping in one room of some random person's home that's just trying to help a little bit, doesn't let you be there past 8 o'clock in the morning, that's a luxury place. So we were on pins and needles waiting for her to find out if she was going to get selected, and it's you have a 1 in 4 chance at getting it. Is your story good enough? Is your flight good enough? Or horrible enough, I guess. But unfortunately she did. She got selected to be that family that got that apartment. It was near the Sunrise Library, and I told her I used to work at the Sunrise Library. I'm familiar with that area. I told her a few places that are nearby. And that was in August of last year. I haven't seen her since then, but I hope that means that everything's going okay for her and her family. And I remember thinking afterwards that I felt like I was meant to be there for her, to help her. Kind of like with Joe, it's something that sticks with me always. Sorry. And I think those things don't come along all the time. You just have to recognize it for what it is. That there's an opportunity for you to make a difference in a person's life. Even if day in and day out, you're just checking things in, looking for movies, looking for books, doing those kind of repetitive tasks that we often seem to do. But yeah, you just never know what people are going through when you stop to listen. You can really make a difference in their life.
How's everyone doing?
Oh, very nice.
I can speak and I can do customer service, but I can't. Let me go ahead and get started, so then that way I get more time. I'm Ebony Manor. I work at the Las Vegas Library. I work in scheduling and programming services. So I totally feel very honored to be up here and amongst, or Steve on here on the side. I feel very grateful to even talk about customer service because I think that's something that, for me, is totally who I am. I think the best word to describe customer service personally would be passion. Actually, when I looked over everything, I was kind of going over what I would talk about. I don't normally carry notes when I'm speaking. I just kind of like to free flow. But I love the word. I think the word passion was the key word for me. I actually came to this branch specifically. I have a degree in human services. And this branch was like, wow, this is like the best place, and I'm going to do great things, and actually I can say that not so much as I can do great things, but when you actually listen to people and pay attention to people, and I agree with that, you can actually see a lot of things going on with them, that you can see the question marks literally on their, on top of their head. One thing that I've done at this branch, and this is just me, because I have a lot of time on my hands being an SPS. I mean, honestly, I get to know all these people. Whenever I'm here, when we open, especially on the weekends, I actually greet them at the door and say hello. My biggest thing here at this branch, not saying it's not at other branches, is that we have a really heavy transient population. We have a lot of people who are really underprivileged and very low income, if any income. And therefore, a lot of times they have been looked down and looked upon as, no one wants to really speak to them or whatever. So I make it my business to at least speak and say hello to them. And I, throughout the way as I'm, walking by or whatever, I will say those things like, how are you doing today, sir? How are you doing today, ma'am? And I stop to hear what they have to say. And I actually stop and give a response as well, if they reciprocate. The thing that Joe and I talked about was, I held a program here in last January, and it was for ex-felons. That passion, that inspiration came from when I worked at Salvation Army. I worked there part-time or actually full-time while I worked part-time here. And I got a chance to work amongst those who were definitely, they had criminal records and mental illnesses. So, I mean, totally not trying to say this negatively. I'm in kind of the right spot here at this branch with that. We have a lot of people who have those backgrounds and who are mentally ill and who are off their medication. So I was talking to a lot of the group. I held group meetings with them, and I asked them, I said, well, what are the biggest things you feel that is the biggest barrier for you to getting a job or moving your life forward? And a lot of them said their record. And I'm like thinking, wow, really? So they schooled me on the levels and the, if you're level this, if you're level that, on a felony. And I was like, wow. I was like, maybe I can do a program like that. So I ran to Thayer about the program. And I'm like, ooh, we can do this program on ex-felons. So he was all for it. And we had an awesome turnout. We had like over 300 people that showed up.
And the thing that I did also in the midst of it, while I was setting up, of course, we had the library open, the program started at 11, I just dressed down. I had some sweats on, a t-shirt, because I was actually putting things up and then I was gonna change once I got in my office. And the thing was is that I just randomly just kind of went over and asked them why they were here, and what have you done? And all of them, I said, what kind of skills do you have? Because that was the point, the resource skills. And a lot of them were telling me the jobs that they had. So when I changed, and here comes 11:30, and I do like a little presentation of what this is really all about and present the vendors. And I shared with them, you know, a key thing about their skills or their levels is that when someone is asking you about your skills, it's not your job. I don't want to know your job. I want to know what your skills are. I said, because you may not have even worked in 10 years because you were incarcerated for 7 of that and haven't been able to get a job in 3 years. So give me your skills. You learned something. There's a skill set that you have. And a lot of them were very inspired. So inspired to the point that a lot of them responded back to me. They wrote me emails letting me know that a couple of them did get jobs. And there were a couple of them who needed some further assistance. On their record, they had sex offense, so a sex offender. With that, you can't get literally anything. I mean, I'm a person about it, like I said, passion is running that thing for me with customer service. So I'm feeling injustice for people. I'm not judging what they did. Do I like what they did? No. But that's not my concern at that point. Somebody's coming to me because they felt that I can help them out. So I'm spinning it out with the resources, how I can help. I mean, I call probation officers. How come this person, if you let them out and there's no funding, you want them to pay for what? I mean, if you want him to pay for restitution and you want him to pay, what, $75 every time he walks in for a group therapy session, and he has to go 3 times a week, and he's a sex offender, and you know he can't get a job? You know, and these are things that it's going over and above, but it's those things that grip them. One gentleman came back and shared with me that, you know what, he said, since I've been out, I've not felt that somebody really cared as much as coming to the library. And I just wanted to say that going over and above and beyond, really and truly, is not really so much as going over above and beyond. It's just listening to somebody, taking that opportunity and saying, you know what, I'm going to stand in there and pretty much like Jack said, I'm going to fill in that gap. I'm going to walk with them and go into that dark tunnel with them in a sense to where to say, I'm going to help them out with something that they need assistance on. It may not be a sex offender or ex-felon for you, but it could be someone else who just maybe even wanted a hello. So thank you.
Library, sciences. And I think Joe probably will give a little example here to crystallize on our presentation, our thoughts here. Let me give you an animated example of what we all experience in investment, especially when it comes to customer service and understanding. Well, you're here at the West Chairs Library, aka Charleston. And the reference that came, minding my own business, doing bids, health sciences in the field and so forth. All of a sudden, boy wonder on the left, expert professional, exclaims, "Jeepers," he goes, "Batman, if this kid comes back, it might be just one more time, because bam, them all out of here." What happened, Ron? What's going on? Well, this kid is coming up at my desk, and he asks me questions like, what am I doing here? How am I doing it? How much do I get paid? Am I a union employee? How did I get to learn this? He goes, if he comes one more time here, I want like them, out of the building. So, I thought about this as maybe he's doing a paper, maybe he's doing research, maybe he's in high school, maybe he's inquiring I don't know, he says, but he just aggravated the heck out of me. So I thought about it, paused for 30 seconds, and then, put in my bed cave, went out in the stacks, and I pursued, this young lad, and I said, I found him, he was in one of the study rooms, plugging away on the computer, very nervous, he wasn't well groomed, and I said, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm a librarian here, this and that. I said, can I help you? Why don't you pass those questions back to me? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to do a paper? Are you trying to do research? What are you looking for? He says, well, he says, I'm out of high school, I spent 3-4 years, doing a hard job, making $70 an hour. I don't know what about my parents and family, friends, they work in the restaurants, and then they did the industry. I want to go back to school, but I don't know what I can do, I don't know what's out there. So I said, so your question is where? I says, you maybe want to pursue a library career? He goes, yeah, because I come into the library, it's quiet, it's safe, I have all the resources, I can afford the Wi-Fi at home. And he says, and I was just inquiring how you guys got to do what you're doing, and what education do I need? Well, I says, okay, that changes the whole story. So you're not doing a paper for school. He goes, no, just a career path. So at that point, I says, okay, first of all, you can volunteer at the library, right? If you like it, you can be a page. You want to go back to school, right? I says, yes. And you went out for 4 or 5 years. I says, how did you do in high school? He goes, I barely got out, he says. Well, you got to bring up your skills. I explored the learning field databases. You can bring up your SAT scores. The Office of Admissions across the CSN. I also told her, if you get into the college, I want you to work at night at the CSN as a librarian. I can help you. You can, come to us. Our business is questions. And this brings me, his whole demeanor changed. And he goes, wow, thanks, I says. You remember, I says, there's no right or wrong answer. Any question you have, if you don't get it from one person or another, you ask anyone. You find the answer here. Because I asked him, all these books, you might not know the answer immediately, but we can get you the answer. So he did up and gave me the application, for the volunteer work and, and so forth. And he was very appreciative. His whole thing lit up. So, I do that a lot. I think I found myself to reach out and really make a connection, because I remember when I came to this country from immigrant family, people reach out to me, and they really, I never expected this day to be here, And I remember those people in those times, exactly, and I try to do it at the college level, and at the, and I think I inspired the kid. I said, come, look for us, ask us, anybody here, whatever you need to do, we can find it for you. And this brings to my point, that we're all trying to say here, that we forget to know what our business is. Like in the word of Ray Kroc, he had a room of all executives here, and he asked him, what kind of business is McDonald's in? Have you heard the lecture, anybody? He asked them, all the top regional, national, what business are we in? Everybody was saying hamburger, yes, fries, whatever. He says, no, we're in the real estate and hygiene business. We're in the real estate business. That's what McDonald's is. They're not in the hamburger business. They're the cleanliness, hygiene, and the real estate business. So my question to you is, what business are we in? Looking forward, 2010, 13, 15, 20. The library is not the same as it has been 34 years ago. And what we're all trying to say here is, we're in the human capital business. Relationships and with people. We're not in the information, or the books, or the stacks. When I'm at the college library, right, students come in and they say, well, can I get this resource? Well, we have it as an ebook. Can I get it from home? I said, yeah, right here. Oh, okay. And they leave. So our generation behind us, they're all computer savvy. I mean, it's sad to say they're going to replace the buildings. It's never will happen in our lifetime, I hope. But the point is, if they can get the information, the book, the article, whatever, so they have a digital device at home, those patrons are not coming in. So the only reason they come into the library is for the human connection, the talk, to say how you're doing, what's going on, what you're working on, the human connection. And I think that's what we need not to forget. And once they come in, they open like a butter, like a flower, like a tulip with spring, right? Where they're all bloom, and they ask one question, the other, and they don't have people to really inspire them and support them. And that's what I try to do, and I see a lot of people doing that, in our district, but it needs to be more done, and take the time individually. And if we all take the time, just inspire one person a week, right? If it's 2 weeks time, 600 people that work in the district, I think we can make a difference in our community. And I think we have to remember in different periods. especially the library. We're in transitional technology, sources are everywhere, and, you know, and we have to service this generation like everybody, you know, explained here, you know, the disadvantaged, the needy, you know, so they have nowhere else to go, and everybody sends them to the library. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, and we're not done yet. I want to open this up now for any questions or comments, contradictions. Just I'll throw my own paraphrase on this, and maybe some of you in the audience or anyone here would like to respond to this. We're talking about making a connection with patrons, and to me, that seems like we have to take a little bit of time to visit with them. And yet I know this is something that I have felt has been discouraged in our work. That we don't want to visit too much, but in order to find out enough about where they're coming from, I think we do have to visit a little bit. Does anybody here have any response to that? Go ahead.
Hi, I agree. I think you have to have time to have a conversation with a person, find out exactly what they need or how you can provide the information, or if what they're asking for is actually what they need. Sometimes we just sort of say, okay, you need that, fine, thank you, goodbye. And maybe they don't really need that. They're asking for something, but they actually need something slightly different to accomplish what they're doing. And if we don't take time to talk with them, we don't find that out.
Do you think, too, that often we know about resources that the library has that may be unrelated to their initial question, but we realize, wow, this could really be of tremendous value to them? Has anybody had an experience like that you'd like to share?
I'll dig you out. That's what this is. Because and I get it from professors as well as students, because they come in and they think that I know everything in the world because I've got all these books around me. And actually, when I talk about Juan's poster, after I finish talking about his accomplishment, I point to his photo, and there's usually 10 or 12 undergraduates at CSN, and I say, is he any different than you are? Is he any different from who you are? And of course, they know they're supposed to say, no, he's not different. But the one young woman said, oh, he's really smart. And I got on her case, and I said, no, he is not really smart. You ask him. Juan is so humble. He will tell you he struggles with his mathematics. And when they come thinking that we have this expertise and we know all this stuff and all we need to do is be a little generous and share it with them, and it turns out we don't know squat about what they need or how to connect them with resources. If you share that with them, even at any service desk, it helps them understand that you understand that part of your job is to help them save face. Orientations now, because I tell them you could do this, and just the slammer is he's won 3 scholarships because of this poster session, $5, $2, and $500, and he's in competition for a $30,000 renewable scholarship. And what is that about? He's persistent, and actually I'm just going to be a hog and tell you one more anecdote. The other thing I tell them is that there's a woman at the University of Pennsylvania, Angela Duckworth, and she's done research on the middle schoolers who are in the top 200 with the spelling bee. And she has devised a psychological exam for them. And she gives it to them, and it measures their persistence and their time on task. And she calls it the GRIT test, G-R-I-T. And she will, in her research articles, will assert that her GRIT test will predict by a factor of 2 who are going to be in the top 10 in the spelling bee next year over IQ. And I say that because smart people sometimes are feckless and lazy. And people like Juan allow you to say the things that you have control of, how much time on task you put in, and how persistent you are. You have control of that. You don't have control of how smart you are. That's what you're born with. You get those cards, and then you can make something out of it, or not.
Thanks, Jack. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, I'm reminded of I had a coworker who went to another branch, and at that branch they would say, well, we only answer this many questions. And she was used to, answering the question, the person had a second question, okay, because they still needed information. And it was really tough for her she would actually have to answer the questions without the other people around, her coworkers around, because they would get mad at her. Well, why are you answering more than X number of questions? And she said, because that's what the person needs, and there's nobody waiting. They still had the mindset of we're a really busy library, we couldn't possibly do it, and they didn't see that their library had changed, and they did have time to answer more questions.
I really appreciate that comment. This is where it gets really practical. I think a lot of what we've been talking about is the motivation, but this is what it is in practice. And we laugh, but I have to confess, at the Las Vegas Clark County Library District, we still have written policies that say we will only help patrons for up to 15 minutes. We will only answer up to 3 questions for a caller. And I think sometimes we've taken these policies and we've turned them into an absolute rule. I will not go past this, where I think it was a guideline, it was the out for us in case someone was trying to monopolize our time. And we don't have to use those policies except in those rare situations. Any other comments for anybody? I have some other questions too, if you don't. Go ahead.
Well, I have 2 little anecdotes. My name is Sam. I work in an academic library. One of the things I always tell whenever the Wednesday meetings come around, they always come in the library, and I always tell all of these students, this is a library and it's really quiet. I'm the only librarian there. I get really bored. Will you please come and talk to me? Because then they feel like, oh, I'm doing you a favor. And so then they come and talk to me. So then I go, oh, you're working on a paper in Phil's class. How's that going for you? Did you find some good citations for that? And they're there, they're talking to me, and I'm getting to know them, I'm making that personal connection with them. And then they come back, oh, I got an A on that paper, I'm really struggling in this other class, and it builds that connection. And they keep coming back. And sometimes it really is just to say, hey, how's it going? I am not bored. I have so much work to do. I don't even know what color my desk is. But they are number one. It's not statistics, it's not reports, it's not buying that new book that just came out. It's talking to them, it's that connection with them. And now they call the library the living room of the university. They all come there to hang out. They used to go, we have a state-of-the-art gaming room with the Wii and Xbox and PlayStation and the new BioShock game and all that kind of stuff. But it's the library that they come to hang out in now. It's amazing, an amazing transformation. The second thing is, when I started there, we had a rule, much like you were talking about, that we wouldn't help a patron with a computer-related question for more than 15 minutes, because it was too much of a time suck. If they didn't know how to use a computer, the thought was, why are they in college? And that's just not the way that I operated. So I retrained my staff, and we have computer workshops all the time now. And if they come in, especially if we have students who take an online class, and they don't know how to double-space the paper in Word, and they're just so lost and overwhelmed. But you show them how to do it. You show them how to navigate. You show them how to click here to do that, and they get A's. It was just the interface that they don't know. It's not that they don't know how to write a paper. It's not that they don't know how to find the knowledge. It's they don't know how to operate in that interface. And so it's kind of building that bridge between what was so intimidating to them in the beginning and making the time to help them. It doesn't matter if it takes an hour. If there's nobody else in line, if there's nobody else waiting, take an hour.
Thank you, Sam. And which library is it that you work at?
The International Academy of Design and Technology.
Thank you, and we welcome you here. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute.
Thank you.
When I hear this kind of stuff, I think, then there's the other person that comes on the shift after you and is busy. And then that person comes in and wants an hour of your time, because the last librarian gave you an hour of your time. It's like, I would love to give you an hour of my time, but I also have 5 people online, and so I'm trying to figure out and get to know people. And so sometimes it backfires on you when you don't have and I think that's probably why a lot of these rules get made in the first place, to try and provide some consistency. Just like you said, sometimes we get carried away with the rules and don't understand the flexibility involved, but sometimes it can backfire on you.
Do you think that you're able to explain to students in that situation or faculty that, look, right now I'm especially busy, but some other time. Right.
Our quality, that's a good thing, but sometimes we hold hands when maybe teaching skills is good, but holding hands and doing things for them, there's a really fine line. And I think librarians, that's one of the professions that have to really learn that, how to get people to move on and take care of their own learning.
I think that's a great point.
Professors have that problem.
Yeah. I don't think, some of us talked about bending rules in certain situations, but I don't think we're about abolishing policy altogether. We definitely need the rules and policies, and we want to respect them. We don't want to bend them lightly, but I think what we're saying is there are situations that kind of defy the situations that the policies were created for, and we have to have that awareness for what the situation is and does it deserve to be bent here a little bit.
I found that it's always a great idea when you're doing something like that, when you're going above and beyond, to make the person aware, the patron aware, this is something I want to do this for you, I want to go above and beyond, but you can't expect this every time. Don't come in the next time and say, hey, the bald guy did it for me last time, you do it this time. That's writing a check that your coworkers have to cash, so to speak. I'm always comfortable going above and beyond, but as long as the patron realizes, yeah, this is not something that I can expect and demand the next time I come in.
Go ahead, Billy.
Because I kind of agree with you that there's many times where I have patrons who owe money, and I make some sort of arrangement with them, and the patron standing behind them has an issue, walks up to me, and they're like, well, you did it for them, and it's like, well, yeah, you can't backpedal on that. But you have to explain that to patrons, that I treat it on a case-by-case basis, and I'm not going to be able to treat everybody exactly the same, depending on the circumstances. But I do think that, money aside, one of the things we're dealing with is a lot of patrons are coming in for e-readers. They're trying to interface with our media, and it's a very difficult learning curve for patrons. And we're having to spend a lot of time with them, and there's a balancing act. Do I show them how to use their device, or am I just showing them how to use the service that we offer? And we have to tell a lot of patrons, we want to help you, but we don't have all the time. So you're either going to have to hang out and wait while we're busy helping other patrons, or come back at another time, and in that case, I would say almost all the patrons are very understanding, and as soon as you frame it like that, they don't have a problem with it. They're grateful for what you can do for them, and they're not upset when you can't do it. But like I said, that money's different, but for affected every time.
Go ahead.
I think sometimes when people, we always have those exceptions. We definitely have those people that's going to test that boundary all the way to the hill. But you do have the people that they know who to go to for good customer service. They really do. And if you've opened yourself up to be able to help them or assist them in that way, a lot of times that, for instance, one good thing, I lost my job back in 9/11, when 9/11 hit. And so I had to go to the Sahara West Library. And that was the closest library to me. I already scoped out the reference desk. I saw who seemed approachable, who did not seem approachable. And when I had to go to that person who didn't seem approachable, I totally knew why I felt that they weren't, because they were not. So, I mean, just kind of an observation, people are, just as we're observing who's coming in to try and talk to us, they're observing who you are, and this person seemed like that they were a little bit more helpful than that person, so they normally gravitate to certain people. And I do believe that we can put that stamp to say, well, you know, this is something that I'm doing especially for you. Because I just, you know, considering what Joe said with his situation, you know, he was congratulating, you know, and saying that thank you for your service. And I believe that gentleman knew off the bat that Joe did that out of, that he couldn't have just walked up to somebody else. It would have just been, you know, that Joe incident. So I do believe that, yes, we can stamp and say, you know, because we don't, like the gentleman said, we don't want to, you know, write a check that our coworkers have to cash in. Because especially for those of you who don't know, I'll be leaving in July. And all of these clients out there are like, oh my gosh, like, how many movies? Are you going to do the movies, or who's going to do this? I said, you're going to be one movie every 3 months. But I'm letting them know, don't expect the same service from the staff that'll be here after Ebony leaves. You know, because that was an Ebony thing. And so I put that out there to them, because I don't want them to have to cash that check and feel pressured behind that. So I think that people are observant. They know who to go to, and they know who they can ask that core question to, and who they can get that 16 minutes with. You know, they do know that, and those who are patient enough to give it to them, they normally come back to that same person.
And I think, well, you said, like, the catch is, yeah, we might be busy that day, but if we're not, then why not go the extra mile? Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Suzanne.
You rubbed off a lot when you were just like playing with me. How could you try to get other people to rub off with you? I mean, it's like, you know how you feel and what you want to do, but how can you then get other people to get on board? You know?
I don't know. You put me on the spot. I would like to say, just a second, Debbie. I would like to say that what motivates me, and I don't think I'm always as good as I was today when I helped Mr. B, but my motivation is partly selfish, that I feel like seeking out these kinds of opportunities, getting to know patrons a little bit, makes my job a whole lot more interesting. That's part of what motivates me. Yes, I want to care, but it's not all altruistic. I want to make my job more interesting too.
Let me add one thing, and then one of the things that I think library staff should do, and sometimes it's against policy, is brand your service. As Ebony is saying, this is an Ebony service. And when you call my desk, I don't say, hello, this is the reference desk. I say, this is Jack. And so that sort of brand, that this is not something that's an institutional product you're getting from.
Debbie, do you have a...
On the other hand, our library council is looking at a big customer service initiative globally, and we would like not just for one person to rub off on somebody, but we would like everyone to feel inspired, that it's just infused in all of our goals, and that we share stories like this, maybe at department head meetings, and that the goal would be that we are all that staff person that everybody wants to talk to, and that we treat each customer of the district like a customer of all of us.
Go ahead.
We're shifting from a statistical-based programming, right? So to a value-based, and I think customer service should be intertwined with what you're doing there, yes. It's the only way to get value-based results versus the numbers that we did before.
I just wanted
to add something. I want to piggyback off of what Tony said first, which is, I don't know, I guess it's related to the question Suzanne asked, but I'm so sick and tired of apologizing to my customer service. I used to work in a place where people really were like, what are you thinking? Talking to that child for 5 minutes straight. Like, I'm tired of it. I just want to put that out there. It makes me vulnerable. I get it. But tying in with that, with what Suzanne was talking about, we had a quick email exchange where you talked to me a little bit about vulnerability and shame, which is related to this, right? So I feel like as library workers, we need to just own the fact that we are vulnerable. We have a number of situations. Some of them are very heavy situations. We have all different kinds of patrons. We are vulnerable, and we have to be, I think, more aware of that and open about that. And when we talk to each other, we have to show this to each other. And I think that that is key to really, doing what we're meant to do, which is helping people. We need to help each other.
And I'm sorry to keep dragging this whole thing going, but I wanted to just add on to that a discussion that's been going on at our branch about, among the managers about customer service and trying to motivate staff to kind of deliver a little bit more uniform level of service. We're trying to focus on how can we motivate the staff to support each other and to share, the skills and expertise that they might have individually, but how can they be more supportive of each other and looking for that. And I think that's important too, because then you can show people that it's okay to, spend a little bit of extra time or, let them because the other thing is just you never know what people are going through, and they might start telling you a story that resonates so personally, and you're like, I can't help you because I've been there, or something like that. And then letting the other people know that you work with know that, it's okay to let them know some of your personal stories sometimes, because sometimes that helps. And I think being supportive of each other in a work environment can help customer service as well, because then everybody's, I'm not going to be upset that they're spending time with this other patron and now I have to take the next person in line for them at a different service point. But I can see that they're involved in something that needs more time or something like that. So being supportive of each other, of your coworkers across departments, I think is really important.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Just a couple of stories. Before my previous job, I worked at the Western Briggs Library, and one story that is always emotional coming up. There was a grandmother who would come in. She was a little confused. She brought me down. After school gets up, it's a madhouse there. Like, it's insane. And I was kind of running around, and I stopped. And I said, yeah, how can I help you? And she said, oh, I have this computer question. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, hold on one second. Let me finish this. And I come back to her. And it turns out her grandson was, he had to take a summer class because if he didn't pass, he was going to fail and not pass, graduate high school. And he had pretty much given up, but she hadn't given up on him and was trying to help him with his homework, trying to help him get his assignments in. And she didn't really know how to use the computer to help him. And I said, okay, let me try. I told her we were really busy, I would come back and forth. And she actually waited, she waited 2 hours, and I would come in between all my breaks when I had any downtime. I helped her walk her through it, and he got his assignment in, it was the last assignment, and he was ready to give up. I'm like, you are so close to finishing. And he got it in, and she was so excited. She didn't know if he would pass or not. But she was so grateful for my help that she was trying to give me money, and she was like, can I take you out to lunch? And I'm like, no, really, it's okay, that's my job. And I said, just, if you do want to give me anything, tell me how it goes. Come back and let me know if it worked out. She actually came back 2 weeks later. He did pass, so he graduated. He was actually the first in his family to graduate. And she was so excited. He came in and thanked me, and she wrote this really, she wrote this really beautiful letter thanking me for my help and, like West Las Vegas isn't the greatest neighborhood. There's a stigma attached to it, but she wanted a better life for him, and it was a start. So I was really excited to be able to help.
I want to make one point clear. I think all of us here do work on the public side of things, but I know that Debbie has talked about how the customer service initiative that the Las Vegas Clark County Libraries want to do is for all staff. And so I think the challenge for staff who don't work directly with the public is to think about who is your customer and how can you provide excellent service for them. And I would mention that a few months ago, I was helping out in Tony's circulation department at the Centennial Hills Library, and I was really blown away by the efficiency that his staff had developed handling our returned materials. They kept pointing out things to me that I was missing, that I didn't know how to stick the paper labels in the book in the right direction. I think the efficiency there really helped the whole library function much better. And so, although the public isn't directly their customers, they were helping the rest of the staff in the process. Well, the customers are there, the patrons are there, the customers too. Any other comments or questions about anything? Go ahead, Deb.
Great. I want Jack to explain the poster.
Okay, two seconds. What Juan did was go to the University of New Mexico on an internship last 2 weeks, and he worked with a research scientist. The research scientist said, hey, Juan, try these Revit antibodies on MRSA. And then I pointed to this footnote, so you learn what MRSA is. A lot of you know what MRSA is, because MRSA is in this building. And it's a multi-drug or methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus that kills 19,000 people, as you learned by his reading, in American hospitals every year, and it's in every nursing home in the country too, and every hospital in Las Vegas. And so he took